to a special edition of the Surfcast Podcast. Happy Halloween, everybody. We're coming to you on a Thursday, extra bonus episode. And today we have a very specific topic, and that is spooky surfcasting stories from our archives. Toby and I have various different stories that have all been harrowing over the years, but we've picked out a couple that we think you will find particularly frightening, or at least creepy, or scary. And hopefully, they don't turn you off from fishing. That's the only thing. Right, Toby? That's the only thing. We don't want to turn you off from fishing. But these are a couple of ones we've picked out from the many that we had to choose from. And we hope you enjoy them. And this is just a fun episode for us celebrating Halloween. And for those on YouTube, you can see that we've really gotten into the spirit of things. So, Toby, with that said, you can go first. I'll let you tell your story first.
First, I want to say thanks to my son Aiden for letting me borrow his Halloween mask. Again, those of you here on YouTube can see it. Those of you listening on the podcast side, maybe hop over to YouTube and give it a look. But anyway, so yeah, my story comes from not necessarily surf fishing, but it was definitely striped bass fishing. It's a while back now. I was trying to figure out when this happened. It was a good 20 or so years ago. The spring run for striped bass, back when it was really good for a whole variety of reasons, much better than it is today. But the run that I would work on was one of the big tidal rivers, and the striped bass would come up in the spring every year, generally following the river herring that were migrating up, as well as American shad. And they come in from the ocean and follow them quite a ways up the rivers in the spring. And there's a little bit of a holdover population as well we had, but primarily we were targeting those bigger fish that would come into the spring. And where we would fish was along the banks of these rivers. And, there's something, at least in my head, like when I'm in the surf at night, for the most part, I don't really get scared, nervous of the darkness. Like, I don't know if it's the fact that I'm concentrating so much more on what's going on with the environment and the conditions, and I'm not really paying attention, but I always get spooked when I'm fishing the rivers at night. I mean, I've screamed a few times like a little girl when like a beaver has splashed up next to me, or I had I call them pterodactyls, but a great blue heron literally almost landed on top of me.
Those things are the worst. Yeah.
I was along the riverbank and the thing didn't see me and it came flying in. I mean, I felt wind off its wings and I let out this yell. I mean, embarrassingly bad. And there's bears around and oddball, strange people and stuff I seem to run into. So it's just always in my head. So this one spring, it started out actually before this story, about a week or two prior. I'd gone out in the earlier part of during the daylight. I took my bike out, my bicycle, and I worked the trail along the river to where I was fishing. My buddy Chris was with me, and where we'd stash our bikes, it was down an embankment to the river, probably, 150 feet from the river. And we're fishing along. I don't know, it doesn't even matter if we're doing anything. All of a sudden we heard some people walking. And we're like, whatever, there's always people walking. It's a walking trail. And then we heard some commotion near our bikes. And then I heard,
oh no.
And I'm like, what the? I realize they just slashed one of our bike tires. So Chris and I grab our gear, we go running up. By the time we get up there, there's just some kids running off, and my tires were flat and popped. So,
oh my God,
that's not the scary part.
Right.
So but that's in my head now. That okay, there's kids messing with us now out here, and on this particular night, I hadn't fixed my bike yet, so I had to walk. It's almost a mile walk in, but it is what it is. At the time, it was well worth that kind of a walk. So I get out there, and now it's the middle of the night, a nice dark striped bass fishing night in the spring. Again, don't recall specifically what our success or failures were, but in the very least, now it's in my mind that there's people. And granted, this is, 1, 2 o'clock in the morning and not as likely, but any little sound, I'm like more in tune and picking up on stuff and like thinking somebody's going to come down, our bike's not here, they're going to slash us.
Right. Oh, yeah.
So,
right.
No, and a lot of times back then, Chris would pack, he has, concealed carry permits, would have a handgun with him. which one night he leaned over to land a fish, and it actually fell out of his waders into the river, and he's fumbling around trying to get his gun back.
Boy.
That might have been the last time he brought it. But this night, he didn't bring it for some reason. I don't know, whatever. He didn't have his gun on him. Not that it's like end all be all, gun, carrying guns, concerns aside, but he didn't have it this night. So we're fishing, and we heard something. And we kind of look back, and from where we are with all the overgrown brush and the trees and everything, you can't really see up to where that trail is. But we kept swearing we're like, dude, there's something up there. Is there somebody walking around? Like, we start joking, oh, it's a ghost, the river, they're coming to get it. Oh. And then, then you wouldn't worry about it. And a couple minutes later, you'd hear it again. And we're like, well, maybe there's a freaking bear or something. Like, we're not worried about our bikes, but let's just go take a look. Let's just go see, So we go from where we are, we walk up, we get back up to the trail, and we look down, and we see a large black shape.
Okay.
And we're like, look at each other, what the hell is this? Like, we haven't been out long enough to have our minds start, playing tricks on us, and we can't figure out what it is. And we're standing there, and we're kind of like looking, and I look at Chris, and now I see his hand go to his boga, and he clips it off. So that's in his hand. So I'm like, all right, well, if he's getting that nervous, I'm taking mine. So here I am standing, I got whatever it's going to do, a 60-pound boga in my hand, and I don't have my rod because we left him down by the shore, and this large black shape is coming towards us. And it's like, we're not talking, we're not saying anything about what we're seeing, but I'm like, we're almost mental telepathy of like, do you see that? Is that going? Like, we're communicating, but we're not.
Right.
And it's coming, and it's getting closer and closer, and finally it gets close enough where we determine, well, it's a human form of some sort, and it's definitely coming to us. Not like, we're envisioning this. Like, it's actually making a point to come at us.
Thank God he was there with you, because if he wasn't, you might have been
God.
like,
I'd have crapped my pants and run the other way.
Yeah, right.
So it's coming, it's closer and closer, and finally one of us, I can't even recall now, yells out like, hey, what are you doing? Like yelling to this thing we fully haven't identified, and in a very calm voice, I'm just here for the river. And I'm like, whoa, like, this is even, like, what the hell are you doing here? It's 2:00, and we start, like, interrogating this person. Oh, well, I'm a Wiccan priest, and I come to the river every year. And he's serious. Like, I'm not trying to over-dramatize it, and, like, this person was 100% believed, serious, this whole deal. They tell you, I'm a Wiccan priest, and I come to the river to respect all the lives and the souls that have been lost here over the years. And he's going on about this whole thing. And we're like, dude, get the hell out of here. We're ready to like beat your head in with these, steel boga grip things. He had no idea what the hell we were doing, because he's like, I've never seen anyone out here. I thought that you were spirits from, past beings that lost. And we had this whole back and forth with the guy, and I mean, just adrenaline rushing. I actually, afterwards, I told Chris, I was like, we're probably kind of lucky that you didn't have your gun with you that night. Not that he would have shot, but maybe he would have drawn on it when he was coming at us, because it was just such a wild situation, something I've never run into ever again. And I've fished that spot, a couple hundred times over the years, and never again, never before, never since have I run into anyone out there who has come to just pay the respect to the river souls that have been, passed over the years. But I mean, the rest of the night before we left, I mean, it was just like jitters and heart racing and adrenaline, and we still bring that story up to this day. The Wiccan priest that we ran into along the river, who was there, paying respect to the souls lost over the many years.
Was he dressed all in black?
He was full black, like trench coat. Like, this was, again, this was like the early 2000s. So that whole
the trench coats were really
trench coat thing. What, like, escalate your concerns and fears even further with all the stuff that was going on. And I mean, he was like full. The trench coat was like the biggest thing that I recall from the shape coming at me. That it was like that full length deal. I mean, other than it's a guy, I don't remember, what he looked like, what his hair, if he had a hat or anything beyond that, other than just this human form that came to us, full coat. Like it was wild. But like you said, I'm so glad I was not there alone that night because I fished that spot a lot of times alone over the years too.
What a great story. You had only told me the bare essentials of that. You didn't tell me all the details, and what a perfect Halloween story. You still there? You okay?
Yeah.
We lost you
Yeah,
for a
sorry.
second.
Yeah, sorry about that.
So, yeah, that was great. Perfect transition, though, because you said, oh, I was glad that I wasn't there by myself.
Yes.
Well, my story, which I've told before in the seminar series, so those seminar series people who are listening to this, yes, there's a couple details I'm going to leave out because I'm going to protect the spot even more carefully, maybe than I was in my seminar series, because there's a big audience and I don't want to give away where the spot is. So, but I was by myself for this one. My story, not spring, happened in the summer. Very, very quiet night. I do remember, I was kind of recalling it today, trying to remember the story completely, which there's already the details are disappearing. So I'm really glad I have a log. Probably should have gone back and looked at the log, and I'll say why in a second when I get into the story. But I do remember being very quiet. It was like a very typical, I think it was July, like very quiet. And walking into the spot, like you, dozens or hundreds of times I've been to this spot. Certainly hundreds of times now. Hundreds and hundreds of times now. But then it was at least in the 100 range. And I was walking in, and as I got close to the access point, I could hear what I thought was music or talking, and I thought it was coming from the shore because it's pretty far away, and it sounded very distant. But as I got closer, all of a sudden, this dog just erupts out of nowhere. This dog just comes flying out of nowhere, and it's barking like crazy, and I can't tell if it's 6 feet away or if it's 25 feet away. And so I freeze, and my heart's pounding, and I'm like, oh my God. And I flip my red light on, and there's a guy, and he's falling on his face, holding onto the dog, and the dog's going crazy. And I'm like, oh my God, but it's pretty early in the night. It's like 9 or 10, something like that. I think it's like 10. And he's like, oh, sorry, man. She's really jumpy, blah, blah. And he starts like chattering and like, I'm nervous. So, he's like nervously talking, whatever. And he has his phone. And I realize he's playing something on his phone. And that's what I thought I could hear from the distance. So, I got my red light on, and I never use the white light because the way it is for me at every spot is I treat it like if I get seen by anybody for any reason, I lose the spot forever. That's how I treat every spot. So, but now I got my red light on, and I can see the dog's like a pit bull mix. It's not huge, but it's got to be 60 pounds, something like that. And he's like, oh, sorry, she's jumpy, blah, blah, blah. So he's going, oh, no problem. It's okay. And my number one advice I give everybody is when it comes to your spots, doesn't matter who you're talking to, your number one priority is just get away without answering any questions. Just get away. So you just want to get out of there. So I'm just trying to get by him, but I have to get by him to get to the access spot. And he said, oh, it's no problem. And the dog's just barking still, and it's looking real sketchy, but I'm like, whatever. So I kind of get by the dog, and he sees my fishing rods. And he's like, oh, you going fishing? Yeah, I'm going fishing. Oh, you fish a lot? Yeah, I fish a lot, but I'm backpedaling. Now I'm around him, so I'm like getting away from him. And he's just talking and talking. I'm like, yep, all right, yep, have a great night. Yeah, you have a great night too. Pause. So you're going fishing? You're fishing, huh? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, oh, cool, blah, 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 blah. All right, well, have a good night. All right, have a good night. All right, have a good night. Yeah, you have a great, all right, have a good night. All right, and now I'm like far away, and he just keeps going. Yeah, I fish, I remember, blah, blah, blah. And he's just going on and on and on and on. And I'm like, now I got my back to him, and I'm power walking away from him. And I'm like, okay, so he was whacked out. But, it's whatever, no big deal. I got my wetsuit on, I got my fly rod and my spinning rod. This was back when I was still doing that. Get down to the spot. It's really quiet. You mentioned great blue herons. I think this is one of those nights that I had great blue herons. There was some small bait. They're flying around. It was very quiet. The first few hours I fished, nothing remarkable. Caught some fish in the fly rod. I think this is the part I can't remember that I said I should have gone back to my log. And when I've told the story before, so this might be the part I'm getting wrong in my recollection. But I think this is one of the nights where I had some fish on the fly rod and I broke my fly rod. I broke the tip. And I switched to the spinning rod, and I've told the story and I give examples of where I use teasers and non-teaser places. I believe this is one of the nights where I got like a 40-inch fish using a teaser. which was really frustrating because I was only catching schoolies on the fly rod. And then I switched, and it was like the very first fish when I, 2 casts in or whatever. So, pretty decent night. I was totally happy. It was like a totally chill, like I wasn't out there like, I'm going to get a 50 tonight. But I was out there for a while, 3-4 hours, 4, I think. And as the night went on, I don't believe in sixth sense. I don't believe in like a premonition sense, the way that like pop culture sixth sense. I believe in sixth sense, like, oh, you feel like something's watching you and you turn around. Kind of like what you were just talking about. Because I feel like you hear something, you smell something, you catch a change in light, and your brain doesn't like tell you consciously, but it's subconsciously aware. I believe in that sixth sense. But I'm getting nervous. And I never get nervous. And I was just like, what if he's still there? So I finished up the night, and I fished longer than normal because I was like, well, I'm going to fish real late to make sure he's gone. So now it's like 2. It's like 2 a.m. And I'm walking back, and I'm getting closer and closer, and I'm going, what if he's there? What do I do? So I decided, and again, I never do this, and I tell people not to do this. I turn on my white light, which is pretty dim, and I come out, as I get close to the access point, I turn my white light up a little brighter because it's got multiple settings. And when I do that, the dog starts barking. So now I can hear the dog barking. And it's still fairly far away, but, I don't know how far, 100 yards or something. And I'm going like, oh my God, what am I going to do? Well, maybe it's not the same dog. I'm trying to play these mind games. Maybe it's not the same dog, whatever. But it's like the middle of the night. I'm like, it was fine last time. It'll be fine this time. Maybe he's sobered up, whatever. I come out of the access point. It kind of dumps you out. And he's there. The dog is going ballistic. And I thought he was like singing when I was coming up on him. He's screaming. I'm going to kill you. I'm going to take you right now. You think you can take me? You're nothing. And like, he's saying this before I came into view. And there's no way he could even have seen my light. So he's just screaming this at who knows what. But as I come into out of the access point, the dog sees me and whips him around and like orients him towards me, knocks him down and drags him. And like, not very far, but like, drags him like 5 feet on his stomach. How he didn't let go, I have no idea. I mean, I'm assuming if he was drunk, he probably would let go. So he's probably on meth or something. He's probably cracked out.
Drug strength.
Yeah, exactly. So me being, scared, I'm like, I don't even know what to do. He's completely blocking my path. I switch my rods to the same hand, and I pull out my dive knife. And I got this big Cressy Borg. It's this full tang blade. It's 7-inch blade, goes all the way through the handle. It's this giant thing I used to have back before I realized that I really don't need that kind of hardware. I've gone to a much smaller knife. I got the one you have now. But this is a huge knife, and I'm holding it. It's got a big serrated blade, and I'm looking at him. I'm like, man, it's okay. My white light's on him, so he's completely blind because he's got no light. And he's like, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to take you. You think you can stop me? Let's go. You and me
he's
right now.
He's still yelling all this?
He's screaming. And he's like spinning. He's like almost spinning. Like is why I thought he was dancing and singing at first. And so I'm trying to like circumvent him, trying to like go around him. And I'm like, it's okay. I'm like not even thinking about where I'm parked or what direction I have to go. I'm just trying to get around him. And I'm like, it's okay. It's just me. Hey, man, I'm just fishing. Just going home. No problem. Just going home. And the dog knocks him down again, but doesn't drag him. He gets back up. And in my mind, I'm thinking, you got to worry about the dog. Don't worry about the guy. Worry about the dog. Because if the dog gets loose, what are you going to do? And I'm like, and so then I have this moment where like my light flashes on the blade and I see the knife and I'm going, in my moment, like time freezes and it's like, what the fuck are you going to do with your knife? Like, what are you going to do? You can't even, I'm not a fighter. I don't know how to fight. Not really. And I got a knife and like, what am I going to do? Stab the dog to death? And then like, he's going to be attacking me and the dog, like I love dogs. I don't want to stab a dog. And so like, I don't even know what to do. So I had this, and right then panic took hold. It was like, boom, just wham. Consciousness shut down, everything. My heart, my ears are ringing and I'm like, I just got to get out of here. So I just like ran down the side and just jumped into the woods and just turned my light off. And because I don't know what I was thinking, like he can't see me if my light's not on, I guess. And I go black and he's just screaming. But it worked. It worked because he had no idea where I was. Because, you think about it. If you're in the dark and then someone shines a bright light in your face and then all of a sudden the light's gone, it's like they're gone. Place is whacked out, right? So he can't see me. So he's like walking and spinning. The dog's jumping and barking. My heart's hammering. My ears are ringing. And he just kind of like stumbles around and he just like kind of walks away from me. Luckily, I have no idea why. I don't know why he went that way, but he didn't go very far. But I got out of the woods and I kind of crept away. And long story short, part of the details I don't want to get into, I got around him and I got back to my car. My heart rate must have been 200 the whole time. I still had the knife in my hand when I got in the car. I literally took my stuff and put it all in the car. I didn't even take off like my bag. I was carrying a shoulder strap bag at the time. I didn't take any of that off. I just got in with it on. I didn't even think about it. And I still had the knife in my hand. I like threw it into
grip on the knife.
Yeah, I like threw it into the passenger seat sort of deal, you know? And I got in and I motored away, and I was like 20 minutes down the road before I like came back to, which I have another story about that once where I drove for an hour before I came back to, which is a whole nother, where I knocked myself out. That's a whole nother story. But I pulled over and I changed, and I was like, I couldn't believe what happened. I debated calling the police because I was like, what if, like, I don't know what he's doing there. There's no tables, there's no chairs, there's no bathroom, there's no any reason for it to be there besides maybe he was on the shore earlier and maybe he was high on the shore and he just come out and now he's so whacked out he doesn't know what's going on is what I'm guessing.
Lost.
Yeah. So I'm like, should I call the police? And I was like, nah, I don't want to go on my spot. I don't want to put a report in, right? So that's the end of the story, but that's not the end of the story. There's an epilogue. So I go home, I get home, I'm calmed down. I'm like, wow, that was crazy. What would I do different next time? Think through all that process. And the next morning, Carly wakes up. It's summertime. She's a school teacher. I tell her the whole story. And she's like, that's crazy. That's like, so like, that's really bad. You could have gotten hurt. I don't want you to ever pull your knife again. You should have just dropped your stuff and ran back the other direction. I'm like, I know. I didn't think of any of these things. And so we're talking and, a little while goes on and she's like, so you're probably going to stay home tonight. I was like, oh no, I'm fishing tonight. And she goes, you're not going to go back there though. I'm like, oh no, I'm going back there. So I went back to the same spot that night and I brought some pepper spray and I was like, I'm just going to scope it out first. So I drove by a couple of times and I actually didn't put my stuff on. I went and checked it out, came back, nobody was there, and I went fishing. And I do remember that night being a skunk. I remember not catching anything. So I remember thinking like, well, okay, great. Now I won't come back the next night. So
now, you never figured out who he was fighting? It was just something in his head?
I think it was just something in his head. I think because he really looked like he was dancing and it sounded like he was singing for some reason to me when I first came upon him. And then it looked like he was dancing. Like he was like spinning around and like jumping and stuff. So wild. Yeah, no, it was wild. That was definitely, besides the time I had to swim in my waders, that's the scariest thing that's ever happened to me in the surf.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was very, very scary. So definitely wouldn't want to pull a knife next time. So, Toby, your story was scary. My story was scary. I'm sure lots of our listeners have scary stories. If they want to share their scary stories with us, what should they do?
I'd say throw them in the comments on YouTube. I know obviously a lot of you are watching this on YouTube, but those of you just listening to your podcast, hop over Surfcast Podcast on YouTube. In case you didn't know, we have videos that go along with all of our podcast recordings as well. So you could see us, you could see our costumes today, and you can throw in the comments some of those scary surf fishing related stories, and maybe we'll tell one of those next year or have somebody down. Who knows? If it's a good one, we'll think about it. But throw them in the comments. Yeah, and happy Halloween, everybody. I love fishing on Halloween, and I hope you get out tonight. And good luck if you're fishing tonight, and we will see you on the next edition of the Surfcast Podcast. This has been a weekly edition of the Surfcast Podcast. You can find out more about the podcast at surfcastpodcast.com, or definitely check us out on social media, Facebook, Instagram, at the Surfcast Podcast.